Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Holy and Hormonal podcast. My name is Kim Gargano. If you're new here, I created this podcast as a safe space for us to approach periods and our hormones from a Christian perspective. You guys know the drill by now. I'm cracking up because I'm so excited for you guys to hear this episode. Hope Reagan Harris has joined us. She is one of my very good friends and she's an author. She's a mom. She is the founder of nonprofit Purpose Doesn't Pause. She just released her book Now Over Next, which I had the privilege of endorsing, and it's all about FOMO. We're going to talk about all that in this episode, but I'm like, this episode brought my heart so much joy because it kind of was just like two girlies just catching up. Like it kind of felt like a FaceTime call and we were cracking up during the episode. And I just felt the joy of the Lord. And I hope that you guys learn some stuff from Hope. We talk about pregnancy hormones. We talk about being a mother and navigating owning a nonprofit and just managing all the things of life and how pregnancy and motherhood has changed her relationship with God. We get into all of it. So I'm going to stop yapping now and just introduce Hope Reagan Harris. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited for today's episode. Hope, welcome to the Holy and Hormonal podcast.
Kim, I'm pumped. I feel like this has been one of those podcasts that I'm like, if I could have a convo with Kim on her podcast, it would be amazing. Yeah, I'm so
Yes.
pumped.
I've been on your podcast now twice, and we were just waiting for the right time. And
Yeah,
then
that
I
was
really feel like this is the best time because you are about to have baby number 2.
I know. I remember Loki texting you, be like, hey, I'm pregnant. Oh, and by the way, if you want to talk about pregnancy hormones, let me know.
I was like, exactly. I need that. I want to have this
Yeah,
conversation. I'm so excited. Oh my
me
gosh. Okay.
too.
So for everyone who doesn't know who you are,
Yeah.
tell us everything about Hope.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, y'all, I'm just a very ordinary girl. Grew up in a town of 10,000 called Greenwood, Arkansas. Went to Pepperdine University, graduated in 2017, and entered into corporate America for about 7 years. I had my first baby, my daughter Remy, in 2023, left corporate America, and have since become a stay-at-home mom, nonprofit founder, which I'm like, that sounds way more legit than it really is. And yeah, I write some books here and there as well.
Well, everything that you do is just like, yeah, she's a mom. She used to be in corporate, but like she also runs a nonprofit and she's doing all these things. If anyone has seen Hope on social media, you might have seen the letters that you were doing. Can you explain just a little bit
Oh
about
my
like
god.
that whole thing that went viral with like
Yeah.
your Jesus letters?
Oh my gosh. So Kim, this was so crazy because long story short, I had a book come out called Purpose Doesn't Pause. And I just kind of had this hunch like when it came out to start a nonprofit, but I really didn't know like what the nonprofit was going to be. I had some ideas of like maybe it's homes for women that have been in human trafficking, but like that seemed really far fetched because I would have to raise millions of dollars. And so, anyways, I was working for YouVersion the Bible app for a short stint after my daughter was born. So kind of like in between corporate America and like actually quitting. And long story short, felt led to quit my job at YouVersion, become a full-time stay-at-home mom. And literally the night before I put in my notice, I got like the signal that my nonprofit had been approved. So I'm like, okay, God's about to do something, but I really don't know what. So anyways, fast forward like a month, I reach out to Dayspring. I wanted to start a podcast called Purpose Isn't Pause, but I didn't have the money to start it because I didn't have a job anymore. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll like go ahead and give you like exactly what it costs for you each month to run the podcast. And so I went to visit them. They're also located in Arkansas, and they gave me a pack of cards. Well, Kim, during Remy's nap time one day, so I'm like starting the podcast, like it's kind of like, the Purpose Isn't Pause nonprofit is like approved, but I don't know what it's going to be. I randomly just like video myself, some B-roll, y'all, like writing some cards. It's like, do you ever wish someone would send Christian encouragement to your mailbox? Kim, I had like a stack of 40 cards that Daystring had given me. And I was like, oh, like maybe 40 people would like be interested in this. I could, send some cute little letters to people. Well, it went viral. And I counted, I actually just did, yeah, in less than a year. So that happened last April. We're talking in March of 2025. But anyways, I just did like a report on how many letters we've sent out for free since it started a year ago. And we're at 24,850-ish women that we've touched, 113 countries. And yeah, it's equivalent to the population of Auburn, Alabama, or Madison Square Gardens when it's sold out. I'm like, what? But yeah, I haven't written all these, so y'all, like, don't worry, my daughter is getting taken care of, and we're okay. But literally, I've probably written, I would say maybe out of that number, like 1,500. I mean, I really haven't written a lot, but y'all, there are women around the world, like, locking arms with me to write these cards, hosting postcard parties. It's been wild. So yeah, if you want a postcard, go to my Instagram, and if you want to help write, go to my Instagram. We need both. So
Sounds like it.
we
This
want to
sounds like
write,
all
and we
hands on
also
deck.
need help writing.
That is so unique and so cool and so personal. And like, okay, so Purposes and Pause is now like a global movement, which
I
is
know,
so wild.
which is weird because when I wrote the book, I was in corporate America, and the like whole reason the book started, which I think you probably know this just because um I don't know, we've been friends for so long, but I got like on a Peloton one day and Kindle Tools like teaching the class, and I just remember like staring at her and not doing anything. And my husband, this is like pre-kids, my husband walks in the room and he's like, if you want to work out, like you kind of have to move your legs. And we both laugh because he always is joking with me like that. And, that's just kind of us. But then when he left, I was like, wait, this is exactly what is happening in my life. Like, I am sitting here thinking I do not have a purpose, just like I'm sitting on this dang bike. And it was funny because, like, once I actually turned up the resistance and, like, leaned into what Kendall was telling me to do on the ride, even though, like, the resistance was cranked up and, like, the situation or, like, circumstances were harder, it was easier when you leaned in. And I'm like, okay, the situation I was in corporate America was really hard, but the Lord has to have me here for a reason. And I noticed when I started leaning into him, something changed. And so my whole like thought behind this book when I was writing it, way before, any of this happened, I had just gotten pregnant with Remy. I literally remember being like, how cool would it be if this like sparked a movement? Because it's like the movement on the Peloton of leaning in. How cool would it be if other women just like lean in? But I didn't know we'd be leaning in together to write other women postcards. So
No idea that that was how that started.
yeah, so it was all
That
about,
is
like, the
so
movement
cool.
of, like,
Yeah.
your posture just being, like, somewhat complacent, which if you're watching on video, you can see this, or, like, I'm gonna gear up and move in, and I'm gonna, like, crank up the resistance and surrender to that, but just lean in on the Lord, like, in my weakness, he is strong. So anyways, it's crazy, like, and this whole movement, it happened, Kim, when I don't even have a job. Like, I used to make over, 6 figures plus in my corporate America. And this is all happening when I'm a stay-at-home mom and have no job. And I feel like the Lord's like, Hope, don't you know I'll provide for you? Don't you know that I have great plans for you? And the same is true, for everyone else. So in my weakness, I'm leaning into him. And really it's just boasting about his strength and his grace. And, just like Paul says, like, I have nothing to boast about. Like, I am just a very, for me, normal girl, and the Lord's just doing incredible things that I wouldn't have ever dreamed of. I mean, I would have had no idea.
Test to that as your friend who like walked with you through that really hard season. Like, you were really so nervous about it. And there were other circumstances in your life that like it just felt like things were like stacking up. And just seeing how the Lord has just so clearly like provided for you and just breathed on this ministry is so, so, so cool. It stirs my faith because like I was watching all this happen. I was getting the voice notes from you. I was
Like,
hearing all
Kim,
this stuff.
what's
And
happening?
it's just that's what's so beautiful though, going on a tangent just about fellowship, because
Yes.
the Lord says to carry each other's burdens and like thus fulfill the law of Christ. And what a blessing it is that like you let me into that season of your life, because now we're sitting here and there's a testimony from it. Like, praise the Lord.
No, and same for you. And you know what I was just thinking as we're talking about this? I'm like, Kim, you were the first guest on the podcast. When all this was happening, I'm sure I was like, Kim, postcards, podcast, what is this? What is this? But no, anyway, it's been crazy. And I have felt called to kind of pause a little bit from like July to December with having baby two, which we'll get to. But I'm like kind of nervous slash very, very expectant. I'm like, man, if God's calling me to sit still, I'm kind of scared for what he has after those few months. I'm like, oh no, what is this gonna turn into next? Because even today I feel like I can barely keep up with it. But I don't have to keep up with it. And anything God gives us, so we don't have to keep up with, because I mean he's God. But Anyways, yeah, that's the Jesus love letter encouragement viral reel story in a
That's
nutshell.
so funny. Oh, the Lord is so funny, isn't he? He's
He's
got such a
great.
sense of
I
humor.
know.
So I want to talk about your most recent book. It's all about FOMO. I did. And when I got the copy, I was like, oh, how cool is this? That I got to I literally read it and I loved it so
Your
much.
name is in it. That was actually so encouraging though when you were like texting me and like highlighting things. You're like, this hits home. And I'm like, praise, because you write stuff. I mean, as you know, and you're like, is this even going to resonate? Like,
Mhm.
is this
Yeah. So
relevant?
tell us all about the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kim, what was crazy, and I know like you've witnessed a lot of this just as again with being my friend, but for everyone listening, it was so wild because I had felt this nudge. So I worked for Walmart corporate office. That's where I spent the majority of corporate America at for like 6-ish years. Had Remy after maternity leave, went and worked at YouVersion, the Bible app. But while I was at YouVersion, it was when I was starting, like towards the end of my time at YouVersion, starting to write Now Over Next. And at first, I remember I was commuting a lot to Oklahoma City and back because I was working remote in Arkansas. But anyways, I was like really gung ho on thinking this book needed to be about fear. And one day I was like traveling and I just felt like the Holy Spirit was like leading me to think, no, it's actually about fear of missing out. And like, I just felt like the Lord was like, hope. The problem isn't necessarily fear. Like, yes, fear is a thing, but the problem right now, especially for women our age and just in our generation, it's like the fear of not doing the thing, because there are so many opportunities and there's so many different avenues we can go in. It's not really like fear of doing something. It's like fear of doing, like spending your time on all the wrong things and not actually focusing on what matters. So anyways, I had that like revelation that it was going to be about FOMO, but I was kind of like, this is really weird. Like, because I feel like my life really is kind of like doing the thing. But what was crazy is around that time when I'm writing, I start feeling this prompting to be a stay-at-home mom. And I talked to Will about it, my husband, and we were just putting pen to paper. And at first he was like, yep, let's just do it. And then the more we put pen to paper, it was like, wait, we're going to be like negative every month. Like, there's no way we can make this work. And I remember praying to God. I was like, okay, Lord, like, if you really want to make this happen, like, you're going to have to do something crazy because, like, I like working. I've already taken a 6-figure pay cut to go to YouVersion from Walmart. Like, I don't really know what we're going to do. Anyways, long story short, like maybe a month passes by. My in-laws were going to open up a daycare, the same like daycare franchise that my daughter was in, which I actually talk about this in the book. And they don't put it in writing because they're smarter than that, but they essentially tell us over coffee that Remy is no longer like allowed in their childcare and they don't want to care for her anymore. So overnight, I am like, now I understand why I'm writing about FOMO, because I am like quitting my job. I told God to do something crazy, but I didn't think it would be like him literally kicking my child, using a situation where my child's getting kicked out of school to push me into being a stay-at-home mom. And so anyways, yeah, the whole book is really just about my journey from, I thought that I had taken like leaps of faith to leave, my job at Walmart, because so many people were like, hope you're crazy, like you're leaving this stable security. I had these sponsors telling me I was going to be an executive someday at the company. I was in meetings like where the CEO was like mentoring us. I mean, Walmart is the biggest company in the world. And so there was just like so much maybe hope found in for me and worth found in my corporate career. And then to even, go to YouVersion, it kind of felt like, and I talk about this in the book, like I remember at one point admitting to my colleagues, like, yeah, so many people think I've taken like a step back. And after I said that, I'm like, why? Like, why do I have this pride that I'm telling people that are my new colleagues at work that like I've taken a step back? Like, this is incredible. This was like one of my dream jobs. And so, anyways, with that being said, the entire book is really just about me going from corporate America, taking like a step of faith, and just basically my testimony of where I am today. So, how I went from the girl who was sold out to corporate America to the girl who is just doing whatever God is calling her to, whether that is cleaning diapers, taking my daughter to the park when it's freezing or whatever that looks like. It's just like being so focused on now instead of next, because I used to live for what's next. And I just really want people to embrace and experience living now and today, because I have just with that, I don't know, experience stuff I can't even explain, Kim. Like so much more freedom, so much more peace. And I was even sharing with you, like we're in the middle of moving on Thursday, 2 days from now. We found a home that is more affordable and gives us a lot of financial freedom. And we're leaving like our dream home that we customize and would be like considered luxurious. And like the hope, I don't know, when I started writing that book, would have never fathomed that I'd be giving up my home. And I even talked about in the book, like we thought we were going to have to give up our home, but we didn't, but I just think God is never done and his transformation is only just getting started in each of us. And yeah, it's beautiful. I'm learning to embrace it and to just be expectant if he is calling you to something less, that from the world perspective, like be expectant for how much more that is going to be of him and how much more of that is going to be of like the things that are unseen and the things that you just can't really even articulate or put into words.
So
Like,
there was this video I saw on TikTok
yeah.
the other day. And it was this girl describing this video that she saw. And she said that it was this 80-year-old woman who got on the app and was like, I wend my life away. And like, she was like, I'm 80 years old and I spent all of my life being like, when this happens, then I'll be happy. When I turn 25, then I'll be happy. When I'm 120 pounds again, then I'll be happy. And she's an 80-year-old woman being like, I wend my whole life away. And now I'm 80 and I'm looking back and I never, ever really spent a moment in the present being happy with what I had. And
So good, but it's so true. Like I used to live my whole life that way and I still catch myself struggling with that.
I do too, all the time. I am like, oh, when we get the house, when we get the dog, when I get pregnant, when we have a family, when we do this, when we do that. And it's just like, man, the Lord is just like, can you keep your eyes up here, eyes up here, eyes up here? Like we just miss out on so many beautiful blessings because we're constantly looking for the next one. And it's almost like dishonoring God because like he gives us all good things. And when he gives us a blessing and we don't like actually enjoy it, is that like dishonoring him? You know what I mean? Is that kind of like a slap in the face to him to be like, but what about this beautiful thing I just gave you? And we're like, no, but not that, anything but that. And he's like, okay, I
No,
love
but it's so
you.
interesting you say that because I mean, I see that with my daughter, she's 2, and she is just constantly like on the go. Like one thing will leave her content for like max 5-10 minutes. But it's like so funny because I'll give you an example with like this sucker thing. So where I go and pick up my postcards, there's this like jar of suckers. Remy isn't even enjoying her sucker because she's just trying to chow down so she can get as many as she can in her mouth. And I'm just like, wait, like you have cherry right now. Like enjoy that you have a cherry sucker in your mouth. Don't like just, inhale the cherry to get to the grape, to get to the whatever. But it's so true. And I watch her and I just sometimes, to your point as a parent, I'm just like, oh, like, or I'll make her dinner and she'll just throw it on the ground. And it's like, I just spent so much time and intentionality trying to make you something I know is good for you and something that you do like for you to just go on to the next. You don't want to sit and do dinner. You want to go outside or whatever. I mean, but yeah, I think that's kind of describing a little bit like from a mom's perspective of probably how God feels, where he's like, I just spent all of this time preparing you for this moment or prepping you and working behind the scenes to intricately orchestrate every single thing today. And all you want to do is get to tomorrow. Like, come on.
So true. That was
Yeah.
going to be one of my questions is like, how has you becoming a mom changed your relationship with God? Like, has it given you more grace to see yourself as a child? Or like, yeah, like how has that affected your relationship?
Oh my gosh, that's been crazy. So I think it's affected it in a lot more ways than I probably could possibly articulate. But I think first, it's allowing me to see like how much he loves me, like you're saying, like as a child. I think playing like a childlike role is not something I've ever really played. When I was really young, I actually had a brother pass away when I was like, I think 9. And so I'm the oldest. So I don't really feel like for very long I've ever played like a childlike role or always acted more mature or just been more focused on like adult things than, you know? And so it's allowed me to really take a step back. And like, as I look at Remy, my daughter, I'm like, she's perfect, like every single thing about her. I'm like, wow, she's beautiful. You know, I'll do her hair and I'm just like delighting in her and putting her outfit on. You know, Will see her and he's like, you look beautiful, Remy. And it's just all so sweet. And I'm just like reminded that, you know, and Remy isn't like caring about herself in the mirror. She's not ever even looking in the mirror, you know, like we're just playing and doing and being, like being present. And I think that's just really taught me that it's like not about how things appear, but it's really like forced me to figure out like how do I feel inside and like how do I start healing some of those wounds. I think also being a girl mom has just reminded me that like we don't have to be so hard on ourselves. And like the Lord, I mean, He created us intentionally and perfectly, and every single thing about us is something He designed. And so I'm learning to like love parts of myself I didn't always love. But yeah, I also just feel like the last thing I would say is I'm realizing that the Lord always is faithful to provide, because I'm like, if I want to provide so much for Remy, like every single need, how much more does He want to provide for me and for us? And I think that's been the most beautiful thing. And I'll leave us with one example because I think this is like something, and I actually was thinking of this today, weirdly enough, but I was like driving and I was just kind of reflecting on being her mom, you know, for 2 years and what that's been like. And I think one of the most pivotal moments is one night she was crying upstairs in her room. And I like made her this really warm like bottle. So when she was small, she was like maybe right at a year, a little bit smaller. And I went upstairs and I picked her up. I was like, Remy, mom's here. It's okay. And I like pulled her passy out and she just lost it even more. And in that moment, like what she didn't know is that I had like a bottle, something that would sustain her and it would be so much better for her, like waiting that I was just about to give her. But I think it just reminded me in that moment, like so often we feel like God's taken away His best from us, but He never does that without giving us something even better. And I think that's just been kind of like the example that it just burns in my mind as I think about this chapter of life. And it's allowed me to live without the fear of missing out, is knowing like, okay, yes, sometimes I do feel like I'm in the dark, like Remy, like she couldn't see what was coming next. She just knew something was withheld from her. But I've just learned from the Lord, like He doesn't withhold any good things from us. And He loves us so much. He loves us as His children. And yeah, it just keeps me expectant for what He has when something does get taken away, like moving homes and, you know, downsizing, downgrading, whatever you want to call it. I'm like, how much more freedom are we going to have? How much more joy? How much more present are we going to be? And like last night we were at the house, Kim, and it's got this really big yard. Like that's like the thing that's like for upgrading in is the yard. And Remy and I were just like, she was like, Mama, sit. Like she wanted me to sit by her. And she's just like pointing up to birds. And we're just like literally sitting outside together, like watching birds. And I'm like, and then she saw a bird and she wanted us to chase it. And I'm like, this is like, I felt like that was just a glimpse at like what's to come in this next house, in this next home, like this next season, whatever you want to call it.
Wow. That's one thing I'm so looking forward to with like starting a family. And I I can only imagine the way that we're going to be nurtured and our brains are going to become more childlike in the way that we receive the Lord, because like you said, if you want to give your kid the best of the best of the best, how much more does God want to love us and give us everything we need? And there's no selfish motive. Like there's no like ill intent with making your daughter dinner, you know? Like it's not like you're punishing her by doing these things. It's like everything you do is out of love. And scripture says that God disciplines His children because He loves us. And so even if there is a moment where you're like, you know, you have to eat your vegetables, or like we're going to do a little timeout because you're acting up, it's always done from a place of love, because you know that that timeout is going to help them grow and mature and think about their actions a little bit more. And so I can't wait to become pregnant. When the Lord says it's time, it's time. But I want to dive into pregnancy hormones
Okay, let's do it.
because I know nothing about pregnancy hormones. There's not really many people in my life that I'm close enough with that I could ask about these questions and things. And I'm just so fascinated. Like, tell us everything.
Oh my gosh, it is so interesting because I was like reflecting back on just being pregnant with Remy, postpartum with Remy, and then now like being pregnant again. And I think the one thing is like for me, the first trimester, I've been like really sicking with both the Remy, and we're having a boy this time, so baby boy, which is interesting. I've actually been more sick with him. So People are like, "You're more sick with girls," and that's been weird because I thought, "Okay, I'm probably having a girl because I'm more sick," and then, nope, boy. But I would say, like, the first trimester, I really feel like my hormones have almost made me feel, like, really depressed and, like, doomed, and I think that's been so hard because, first of all, like, not a lot of people know you're pregnant, and then second of all, I mean, for me, and I think it's, like, I wanna say it was, like, 70% of women are gonna experience some, like, morning sickness or I mean, mine actually is more at night, but anyways, yeah, but I feel like, feeling for me, like, at least feeling sick and, like, the hormones changing and everything, I don't feel like I get emotional, I just start feeling, like, really doomed because the sickness and, I guess just everything changing so quick, it's like, what is happening? Also, the hormones, I would say, I'm having night sweats, which I did not have with Remy. I had them after I gave birth to her when my hormones, I guess, were, like, kinda coming down, but I'm having night sweats, which is, like, weird.
I
Um,
think that has something to do with estrogen, but
I
I'm not
think it
sure.
does.
I
Okay.
think it is. It's either I think it's either low estrogen or high estrogen. I have to double check, but I know it has
Yeah.
something to do with estrogen because I just read
Yes.
something about that.
Isn't that so weird? It was so
Ha
weird because I had them, after I delivered Remy, but then now I'm having them not like every night. But another thing I will say is with the hormones, crazy dreams. Crazy dreams. Yes. And that was consistent with both pregnancies. And the weird thing is I normally, I like to try to pray for like the Lord to speak to me through dreams. And I feel like that's something the only hard part is the dreams are so chaotic and just like I know they're weird and like way out there. It's not something where I'm kind of like, man, I kind of miss feeling like dreams are sometimes a way of us to communicate. So,
just like monkeys flying on
oh, it's like
broomsticks
so
on a
we're
bus.
I'm trying to even think. Like I normally kind of forget them because they're just like
They're just so
so
crazy.
weird, so weird. Like the other night, I actually had this dream that like it was so weird. It was, like, not even true, but it was basically, like, someone did this whole scan of my body without me knowing it and then showed me that I had, like, cancer all over and that it was it was just, like I, like, woke up being like, "Okay, what?" I don't even know. So, yeah, Kim, the hormones have definitely made that wacky. Um, but I would say now that I'm 17 weeks now, so I'm in the 2nd trimester, have been for a bit, just now actually starting to not feel nauseous. So it can last up to 16 weeks for some people with the hormones and everything, which is crazy. So mine lasted that long. But I'm starting to get energy, which is, like, super fun. Because before I was, like, super tired, and now all of a sudden I'm like, "Okay." So I guess I would say, like, 1st trimester, the doomed depression, almost, like, hopeless. So I'm like, "Lord, where are you?" Like, "This is supposed to be exciting, you just gave me this blessing." And then now I'm like, "Let's do it." But I am very forgetful. I literally Kim texts me, he's like, "Hey, so good for 2:30?" And it's like 2 minutes before. I'm like, "Yep, hop it on." The pregnancy brain is so bad, so
What's
bad.
like one thing with this pregnancy that you didn't have with Remy that you're like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that like hormones could affect me in that way?"
Oh
If there
gosh,
is anything that comes to
yeah, yeah,
mind.
yeah. No, 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 that's good. I'm trying to think what's so different. Um, oh gosh. I haven't been emotional, I would say that. Because like, Remy, I was super emotional, I feel like, and with him, I'm not, so I'm like, I didn't know you could have a pregnancy and you're not emotional. Trying to think what else would be different. Oh my gosh.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm like, I think that's the main difference, and which I don't know if this is hormone related or not. You're the guru on this, but I am, like, wanting to eat pickles all the time.
That's me and not pregnant. I get it. I love pickles. That's so funny. I need to like do the research behind that because that's like one of the most like famous pregnancy cravings is like
Yeah,
pickles or like
I did look it up. I don't know, I think it says it's, like, when you're dehydrated, like, you're trying to get, like, the salt
oh,
back, so maybe but I feel like I just
that
wanna
makes
drink
sense.
water. I don't
Yeah, just drink some salty water or
But with
something.
Remy, I only wanted ice cream and stuff. And this pregnancy, we don't have like a scale in our house because Remy broke it like months ago and we just haven't replaced it. But when I do go to the doctor, I'm not like gaining as much weight as I did with Remy, but because I'm craving like salty instead of sweet.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's so
Yeah,
weird.
going back to the first trimester, I feel like that could be really difficult. Also, because like you're not really like showing, so it's like, am I pregnant? Like, it doesn't really look like I am, but I feel terrible. But like, you can't again, like, not many people know, and like, there's so much risk, and it's just like I can only imagine like the
It's like
chaos.
anxiety.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh.
I felt so bad because I was feeling so sick that I mean, most of the day I was feeling awful. So like I couldn't even hardly like be present with Remy. Like I was just trying to make it through the day for Will to get home, and then I would just like go to bed and like try. I mean, I would try to sleep because that was the only time I didn't feel nauseous. But I literally feel like it started at week 6. So I was sick from January or no, sorry, December 30th all the way until like last week. So March. So it really was feeling like, especially in the middle when I knew like, okay, I'm only 9 weeks and I'm still probably gonna feel sick up until like 14, which ended up being up to like 16. That I mean, I was just like, how am I gonna do this? And there were days, yes, and then I'm still trying to like do the other things that I know the Lord's called me to. So I was just really struggling with the Lord. I'm like, how am I supposed to steward this when I feel this bad? And I think that's when I just had to remember, like, there's enough grace for this. And like the days that I was really sick, like either Will would be able to come home early or Will's mom would offer to help or my mom would take off work. Like he really did bring the people of the day each day or the help I needed each day or the strength or whatever. But it was hard. I'm just like, and now I'm like, oh, I could have another. But I literally was telling Will during that time, like, this is your last kid. This is it. I know. Like, never again. This was, and then, you're even like, why did I do this? Like you really start spiraling. So, anyways, yeah, I would say that's been the hardest part for me. And then my post,
You also have to like tend for another child in the middle of doing all this, which is so different from your first pregnancy. It's like, okay, like I could just take care of me and my husband and my family, but now you have a child that literally still depends on you.
yeah, and I'm at home with her. So, like, I'm not
Yeah.
even distracted because, like, that was another thing I was explaining to Will is I was like, before I was working in Walmart. And so I was just in meeting after meeting and I wasn't as tired, but like I have been so tired, much more tired this pregnancy, I feel like, because I'm chasing around
Yeah.
2-year-olds.
And just like like the mental load of
It's a
like, I
mental load.
cannot
It is.
rest if this
It
child is
is.
running around in front of me. Like there's no like
Yeah.
mental break.
Like today, I looked away for a second to try to put some like donor packets together for thank yous for the nonprofit. Literally looked down for maybe a minute. I'm like not even exaggerating. Remy got into like an older purse of mine and found these markers and she literally permanent, like it all over both arms. Purple, blue, and orange. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So I think that also contributed to the nausea because it's been stress. We're also moving, there's been some of those
Right, of
components
course.
too, but yeah,
My goodness.
fun times.
That story right there is like, I can wait a little longer.
Yeah,
I can hold out a little longer.
send you a video. I'll send you plenty of, birth control videos.
Please do. Please do. That's so funny. So, I want to talk about a little bit of like your advice for starting a nonprofit because maybe there's a girl listening who is like, I have this God-sized dream and I feel discouraged because I don't even know where to start. This feels too big. I don't know how to steward all of this. I don't have the right resources. I don't know the right people. I don't have the right money. Whatever it is, like what would be your advice for someone who wants to either start a nonprofit or just like step out into that dream, that ministry that the Lord is calling them to do?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things the Lord's really taught me, like, through this in this season is stewardship, which is not something I used to be someone that was always like, move with speed, like get things done quickly. But I think there's something to be said when you're really like slowing down and stewarding each step. So, say your dream is to start like a nonprofit, and then say your dream's to write a book. I'll talk about both since they're kind of different. But like, say you want to start a nonprofit, I would figure out like what is the first step for you to be ready. Like, take the step in expectancy that the Lord is going to do that. And that's for the book too. So like for a nonprofit, do your research, but it really wasn't, I would just say this too. Everything that you want to do is not going to be as complicated as you think it is. It's just the overwhelm of thinking of the big picture. But when you start breaking it down and just stewarding each step, I found it a lot more doable. Cause like for me, if you just say, oh, I'm going to start a nonprofit, it's like, oh my gosh, where do I even begin? But for me, it was like, okay, my first step is I need to contact a lawyer to write up like bylaws for the nonprofit. Literally Google this, y'all. Everything that you want to do, you can Google. So I reach out to the attorney and I would say, like, if you steward one step, it will also always point you to the next. So the attorney was like, who's going to be on your board? Oh, I didn't know I needed a board. Okay, so then I'm like able to know how many people I need to contact. So like in order for him to finish his step, I knew what my next step was. And I would say, it was really just step by step, but getting, at least for the nonprofit, like getting the status ready, it was showing like God that it was like, okay, I'm being serious. Like I really want this. And I had my nonprofit before I really even knew what my nonprofit was going to be. And then the postcard thing, like we talked about, went viral and it was like clarity. Okay. And then I would say like on the other end with book, same thing. Like if you have a book on your heart, what's the first thing you can do? Like if it, for me, and a lot of people say, don't do this, but I've always done this. It's like, what's my title going to be? And what's the topic going to be on? And then it's like, okay, maybe I can just start journaling here and there. And I would say like, even with Now or Next, I talked about this. I don't actually know if I talked about this in the book or not, but I literally wrote a whole book, sent it to my editor, and my editor was like, yeah, I think you have more in you in the nicest way possible. And I rewrote the book in 3 weeks. Like all I'm saying is like, just take the step in what you think you can do. And I promise you the Lord will give you the time and the space to actually like in resources to accomplish what he has set out to do. And same with the business. I'm about to start a business, which I haven't really talked about this. Well, okay. So Kim, with the postcards, I'm just like, I'm about to be a mom of two. Like shipping these all out and everything is not going to be super sustainable. So again, I used to like try to overcomplicate things, but like the very first thing with Dayspring, they gave me these stickers that says "Hope can change the world." I'm like, cool, that's gonna be my business name, and I'm just gonna sell postcard packs. And so people can actually buy a pack, and I'm working to potentially get them sold at Dayspring. But you can actually like buy a pack, and then you can be a part of the Purpose Doesn't Pause movement without having to host a party, having to do anything crazy. Like you can just write them in your home and get 20 postcards in a pack. So, anyways, that is kind of, I would just say, but with that, it was like, okay, I've got my business name. I'm going to go ahead and buy my website domain. $16, y'all. Things are a lot cheaper than you think. And then I went ahead and reserved my Instagram. And then I just started announcing it. Like, it's just like steward, like just prepare like you're ready and then wait for God to show up when he's
Yeah.
ready.
What I like to compare that to, what you were talking about, is like the lighthouse vision versus the lamp onto the feet. Like the lighthouse will show you further, it'll give you the bigger picture, but the lamp onto the feet is the Lord being like, just take one step with me. I'm just going to light up what your next step actually is. Like lighthouse vision is great, but like you said, that causes so much overwhelm and feelings of like anxiety and just like feeling like debilitating. Like, I can't do that. But the Lord is like, I'm a lamp unto your feet. In the same way that you probably wouldn't have this business name if the postcards didn't happen through Purpose Doesn't Pause. Like it was all like the Lord will reveal it when the time is right. All you have to do is just be faithful with it and just take one step at a time.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's just like if you, not to like put a play on words with the book, but it's like if you focus on now over next, the Lord will always come through and show you and provide. And like honestly, I don't even know exactly what the hope can change the world's gonna be. Like we'll figure it out. I, still have the lighthouse vision of the nonprofit having Purpose Doesn't Pause places and housing women that have been, victims and survivors of human trafficking. But today I'm faithful with the postcards.
Exactly. This is
Yeah,
literally a life a life of ministry is what it is. It's going to be your whole entire life. Like my life now is going to be talking about hormones and continuing to write books. Just got my
right.
second book deal, which I'm so excited about. I can't wait to tell
Yes,
you about that one. Um
I'm up for.
yeah, thank you. And I just know that like this is my ministry now. Like I'm going to talk about the same exact thing when I'm pregnant, when I'm giving birth, when I'm postpartum, like when I'm perimenopause, when I'm in menopause and postmenopause. Like y'all are not going to hear the end of me. but but it's a lifetime of being faithful with what the Lord's asking you to steward now. And who knows what that would look like in a few years? Maybe it's something else. Maybe the Lord asking me to do whatever. I think what's helpful for people to hear, and I love how honest you are about everything, is looking at people like us. I can see from an outside perspective that it looks like we have everything figured out. We do not. We have no idea what we're doing. Not a single clue. Not literally, I have no idea what I'm doing. I just do it, and the Lord figures it out for me, and I'm like, okay, great. But I think it's encouraging to like hear that, of being like, we're still figuring it out. Actually, like, we send each other texts being like, like a what? Like, just a bunch of question marks all the time. But I think that's the most fun.
I know. Well, it makes me laugh. The reason I'm like cracking up is because one, yes, but two, this week I was talking to my like designer. We're working on like the prototypes for the postcard packs. And she was like, "Hey, so like the first pack is just Bible verse Happy Mail pack." And she's like, do you know if you can like actually sell these to retailers if it has Bible verses on it? And I'm like, "Oh, good question. Not sure." So literally, I think I chat GPT'd it. I was like, "What do I need to do?" And it was like, "Okay, if it's like 500 or less, like you can do it for free. If it's more," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" But like you said, I don't know. And then I asked, like, I was talking to my printing company because they're like, "Hey, you need to have a barcode on the back of these if you're going to sell them to retailers." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've never done that." She's like, "Oh, I'll send you a link." It's called like barcodetalks.com. I bought barcodes for $10. Y'all, like, but the Lord provides every step. And it's just hilarious because I don't know. I just look at my life and a lot of people think I'm just very chaotic and like, what is happening, or like just what? But it's just like, no, the Lord just leads. And I
Yeah,
just
he
like,
does.
sure.
That's kind of the best way to do it, is to just take blind steps of faith and being like, okay, I'm just going to giggle about this because, like, okay, you want me to quit my job and have no money and start this thing? Sure. Okay.
There were days in my prayer
Makes
journal I was literally like, this is the worst time to start this nonprofit. I was like, Lord,
This is the
I
worst time
have
of my life.
I have no money. Dayspring is just covering my Riverside subscription. I mean, I'm like, what is happening? This is terrible.
I have no words,
I know.
Jesus.
I'm going to these like
I am so depressed.
I'm going to these
I literally
millionaire
have tears in
donors,
my eyes.
and I'm like, hi, I peaked and now I'm here and I really need your money to do this. Like, I once could have afforded this, but now I
Oh,
need
I'm literally
6,500
crying.
for
This
the
is
whole
so
year.
funny.
I know. Anyways, hey,
Oh, we're so unserious. It's like, what?
hey, and the last thing though that I feel like the Lord's wanting me to like speak into is like also I think stewarding. There's one thing that no one ever wants to do and is honestly the hardest thing for me, and it's something that I actually had to do yesterday. So we have all of these ambassadors that like we've scaled pretty quickly with the nonprofit, and we were doing like mentorship calls and like, doing all these one-on-ones. Well, as I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, I'm not stewarding this nonprofit well because we're not just focused on postcards. Like, we're starting to try to be everything to everyone. And so yesterday I actually made an announcement to the ambassadors. I was like, look, I hope you guys understand the heart, but like, I am called, just like you're saying, you're called to talking about hormones and all of that. It's like, I am called to get postcards in the hands of women with Christian encouragement. So we're a team of 3. We're no longer going to be able to do mentorship calls. And I know you might be disappointed. I'm actually disappointed we can't serve you in that way, but like, we can't be everything to everyone. And so I think the last thing with stewardship too is like, as things scale, like if the Lord's in it, trust that it will move. Like, at some point you're going to be like, this has moved at God's speed and I don't even know what's happening. And you'll look and you're like, wait, I'm kind of bogged down. Like, I'm kind of distracted. I've taken on these other things. And like, how do I hone back in on the mission? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And so I,
Delegation is something that I'm
yes.
learning as well. Like, I'm trying to hire a podcast editor, and at first I was like, well, I could just do it myself. And I met up with my friend Ashley Hetherington in California, and she was speaking so much life into me. She's like, Kim, God did not call you to be a podcast editor. He called you to speak and be creative, and like, he's called someone else with the gift of editing and video and audio engineering and stuff. Like, let like delegate this to the hands to give it to someone who's gifted in that, who God is actually called to do those things. And it changed my perspective because I was like, man, me really trying to do everything all at once, I could be robbing someone else of an opportunity, you know, that the Lord wants them to step into. And it's the same thing you were just talking about of like the wisdom to pull it back when you need to pull it back is so smart. But as like someone who's running a business, it's really hard because it's like it's growing pains, and it's also like you don't want to let people down. But hey, like we have to get back to the heart of what God is calling us to do. And when we always put that at the center, everything else will just naturally fall into line. And maybe there will be a time in a few months or a year where you could bring the mentorship back and it's going to fit perfectly, and it's not going to like pull from the main mission, you know? So I love that you made that decision because it's not easy to do.
Yeah. No, 100%. And like if you've got a dream on your heart, you know, even like book writing or starting a business, it's like, okay, you're probably going to have to free up capacity in another area of your life. Like just do like a little reprioritization, you know, just get a piece of this is literally what I do. Get a piece of paper or get a pen. And it's like, okay, what is most important to me right now? Like what are goals that I have that I feel like the Lord's put in my heart? How do I put those in a prioritization puzzle to like make it happen? But it's hard because often it means I'm giving up, like, I don't know, saying no to really good things, you know, to do what God's best.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this conversation truly blessed me. I got a good
So
laugh out
much.
of it. I like it's been a while since I had tears in my eyes from laughing so much,
No.
but I'm just picturing you being
Oh,
like, God, I am so miserable. I am broke. I have no money. And you asked me to do this thing. Like,
and
what?
I'm taking care of a toddler.
And I'm also pregnant. Thank you so much.
Now I'm pregnant. I remember this is hilarious. At the beginning of this year, I was like, okay, we're gonna need $50,000 to operate with PDP. Like that's what we're gonna need because it was gonna cover some travel, cover a salary for someone on my team and a few other things. So like $50,000. I even thought like, man, that's really like cutting things. Money wasn't coming in, and one day I was like, I'm cutting everything. I'm even cutting my blue Instagram check mark. Okay, we need $6,500. That's it. And guess what? We got it. Like, but it was like sometimes the Lord is like, no, like, what do you really need? Like, you don't need all of these things to do. And there's days like freaking FOMO. I'll post a reel and it was like, this would get a lot more reach if you bought the blue check mark back. And I'm like, no FOMO. I don't
Yep.
have it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't afford it.
Yeah.
That means
I got things to do.
you're definitely not famous if you cannot afford the blue check mark. Anyways, I mean, you're listening to Kim and I. We just poke fun at each other
We
because
do. We really
honestly,
do.
it's just
Because,
like
like, you need to laugh. You need to
it's
laugh at this.
funny.
This is a
It's so
crazy, crazy thing that the Lord's asked us to steward. So, where can everyone find you on social media? Plug all of your books, where they can find them. Let them know where they can get their hands on everything that you're doing.
Yeah, oh my gosh, Kim, you're the best. Thanks so much for today. And y'all, thanks for listening. You can find me at Hope Reagan Harris on Instagram, TikTok. My TikTok needs help, Kim. I need consulting from you. And then for the Purpose Doesn't Pause, at Purpose Doesn't Pause. And then, yeah, you can find, I guess This Is My Happy Place was my first book. It's a devotional. Purpose Doesn't Pause, and Now Over Next on Amazon. And PDP is literally, I think, like $2.76, cheaper than a pack of gum if you're looking for a new read. I don't know what that tells you about the book. Yeah, I don't know if that tells you the book is really good or really bad, but hey, take your gamble.
That is awesome. Guys, go check her out. Also, listen to her podcast. She has awesome guests on all the time who just share the most incredible stories. Hope, thank you so much for coming on and blessing me and everyone listening. Oh man, I'm just so grateful, and just thank you so much.
I'm gonna be laughing like the rest of the
Same.
day. Love you, Kim. Love y'all.
Love you too.